Before this video starts, I wanted to give a quick disclaimer. The first one is there's going to be some spoilers tied to the epilogue, and obviously I'm going to be talking about the American Dream side quest and the serial killer Edmund Lowry Jr. that's in Red Dead Redemption 2. So if you don't want to know about that stuff, then I'd advise not watching the video. The next thing I would say is I wasn't expecting this video to get as dark as it does. And the reason why it gets so dark is because I talk a little bit about the upbringings of real life serial killers and how the road that led them down the path that they did has some similarities tied to Edmund Lowry Jr. Or at least we can obviously interpret that. Now, I don't go too far into their own killings or crimes, but I do talk about some stuff leading up to that. So if you don't want to know or see the similarities there, just be aware that this video does contain some of that stuff, because I thought it was interesting how much yet how little Rockstar gives us to give credibility to Lowry Jr. as an actual serial killer. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I should probably have another video out today as well, but thank you and enjoy the video. Bodies savagely ripped apart, mutilated beyond any hope of recognition, and publicly displayed for all who pass by, so that they may both shudder in horror and bask in the work of a demented mind's most glorious creation. A mind so arrogant and amused by the chase of being captured, he takes the disrespect a step further and leaves behind a piece of a map that serves as a clue to his own personal identity, jammed into the mouth of his beheaded victim. If you find all three, only then are you given the final piece of the puzzle, a map to the exact location where he has all of his fun, the place where many have had their final moments, where their chests expanded and slowly fell back down as they take their final breaths. It's the same place where he prepares the works of art he takes the greatest pleasure in sharing with the world, and this is all found in the side quest American Dreams. It's an interesting one to say the least. If you haven't caught on by now, it follows the events of a serial killer by the name of Edmund Lowry Jr. He's been active in the fictional states of Lemoyne, the Heartlands, and New Austin. Unfortunately, there is no exact details saying what years he is or was assumed to be active. We don't know who the first victim was, or really to what extent his crimes went. But upon finding the basement that he's hiding in, we're given an idea. This small space is filled with newspaper clippings detailing what we could assume are all of his own atrocities. This entire space is also decorated with body parts, buckets of blood, and a small detail I found a little interesting. You see, while it's easy to have your attention pulled to the newspaper clippings and the copious amounts of limbs that are present, yet their previous owners are all missing, in the back corner of the basement there is a bed, and even a camera, alluding to Edmund taking pictures of his victims, possibly documenting the various stages they were in, from the moment where he first took their lives to whatever happened next. Now, whether if he chose to photograph the bodies alone as a form of remembrance, or as a means to just document the multiple stages of dismemberment that he clearly delved into, or maybe it was both, possibly taking pictures of the body with himself in said photos. It's all fantastically gruesome details we have to just leave to the imagination. But what caught my eye was the birds nailed on the wall. You see, with Rockstar, the devil is in the details. The birds nailed to the wall at first glance is just a small addition to the cruelty of this man and the horror of his own, let's just call it, infatuation with taking a life. But if you're someone who understands how many serial killers in general start out, as it's believed the making of a serial killer begins with animals, and a lot of it in early childhood. Jeffrey Dahmer, for instance, one of the United States' most prolific serial killers, began with an interest in animal bones he referred to as his fiddlesticks. Eventually, Dahmer began searching for roadkill, dissecting the dead animals, bleaching their bones, and placing their skulls on makeshift crosses. Edmund Kemper, another one of America's most prolific serial killers, is said at the age of 10 he buried a cat alive. Later, he dug it up, decapitated it, and placed its head on a pike. Jim Jones, although not exactly to the same caliber of the other two, if you know who he is, you know what I mean, he held rituals and sermons for roadkill he found, and when he couldn't find any, it's reported on at least one occasion he killed a cat with a knife, so he had a sermon to perform. There's plenty of other examples, but you get the point. With this being the 1800s, it wouldn't be difficult to believe from an early age Lowry Jr. was starting to harbor some dark fantasies. Fantasies he may have found easier to disguise as just having to go out and hunt for food. The cutscene we get with him confronting Arthur, or even John, depending on who you are, does tell us he enjoys what he does.
Now, I'm not going to lie. It's not going to be nice and fun. I mean, it'll be fun for me, but it won't be nice for you. At least, no one's found it nice so far. Maybe you'll be the first.
Other peeks into his mind and possible inspirations behind him could be Jack the Ripper. How the bodies are displayed and mauled beyond any hope of identification is similar to Jack's work. However, Jack only targeted women, specifically women of the night. Lowry, on the other hand, holds no discrimination. If you investigate more inside the basement, you'll find 2 letters. One of them is from Lowry's mother. It's one that gives a little bit of details on their relationship. They appear to be close, which makes me curious as to what his relationship with his father's like, because a lot of serial killers come from abusive or neglectful households. The letter is considered to be inspiration behind Ed Gein and his relationship with his mother. And for some added insight, considering this channel is mainly tied to video games, and I want to keep this as lighthearted as possible, Gein is the real-life inspiration behind the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, as his obsession with his mother led to him literally trying to become his mom by making a suit out of human skin. Gein's mother was also extremely abusive, so even though he loved his mom, he was attached to the person that caused him the most pain. While the letter might be considered heavily influenced by Gein and everything he did, what we find inside the basement doesn't reflect exactly the stuff Gein is known for. Again, I'm going to try to keep it a little lighthearted, but Gein's house was decorated with things that were made out of body parts, such as lamps, chairs, curtains, and various other items, such as human skulls used as bowls, and I'll just leave it at that. Lowry doesn't have any of that. I mean, of course, this basement's decorated with bodies and limbs and body parts, but you don't see chairs or curtains or anything that creative or passionate. The other letter is intended to be sent to a local editor, which could be inspired by various serial killers. BTK sent in letters to the police, essentially telling them that he needs to get front page publication for his crimes, otherwise he's going to go out and continuing doing what he was doing. I'm pretty sure the Zodiac Killer also sent in clues to the police mocking him. Jack the Ripper even has multiple letters, although out of everything that the police got, one of them is considered to be an official one, because with that letter came a half-eaten human kidney, leading to many people believing that Jack the Ripper even committed some cannibalism. But Lowry, again, there's no official signs to that. The inspirations are notable. Even Lowry's appearance is assumed to be based on real historical serial killers, from H.H. Holmes, who's considered to be the United States' first modern serial killer, to other people I personally have never heard of. And there's other indicators that are quite interesting about Lowry himself. If we take a look at this letter, it's obvious that it was drawn up via a typewriter. Lowry's attire, how his mother writes back to him, and the fact that his letter was written by a typewriter, which, by the way, at the time, they were not cheap. They were believed to go anywhere in price from $60 well into the hundreds, which if you adjust according to modern day currency, $60 would equate to around $2,300, and $200 back then will be in the ballpark of $7,600 nowadays, based on the brand, the build, and if it was a hand-me-down or not. And that's why, to me, it's so interesting to know what Lowry's background was like. How was he able to find a typewriter? Was it through his job? Did his mom buy it for him? Was it in his apartment or his house that he lived at? Clearly, he didn't live here, because his mother reports that his neighbor told her that he's got coming and goings well throughout the night. And like I said at the beginning of the video, Rockstar gives so much information but so little at the same time that in a historical sense, it's still somewhat believable. We don't know every single thing about every single serial killer at this point in time, let alone every single person at this point in time. Documentation, paperwork, even stuff on outlaws weren't properly kept track of. People went missing all the time. You just gotta go based off of what think you know, and how crimes that are reported, that are publicly or even privately known to law enforcement, just have to be used as references. Were these killings the same as the killings that are tied to this person? If so, then yes, he's to blame for these deaths. And it's that very topic I want to wrap this up on. The world of Red Dead Redemption 2 has many mysteries and many deaths, some of which may all very well be tied to Lowry Jr. himself. For instance, the chilling grave of the Blackwater Athletics team that can be found in the region of Tall Trees for a long time was thought to be at the hands of Skinner Brothers. John has a run-in with the Skinner Brothers during the missions The Toolbox and Uncle's Bad Day and the epilogue. missions where we see the brutality of this gang firsthand. They lodged a dagger in the eye socket of one of John's hired gunmen.
Now where's Mr. All right.
And later, as a form of retaliation, they capture Uncle and try to roast him over an open fire.
Some time. Let's get Uncle. Uncle, what have they done to you?
The grave and how the bodies are displayed definitely align with the methods and the brutality of the Skinner brothers. However, it's after a few coincidences found within Lowry's basement, his own method of killing, and how the bodies in the grave indicate the causes of death are similar to those killed by Edmund. And with his 3 works of art displayed in 3 separate states, it goes without saying, Lowry's covered very vast distances and is very likely an opportunistic killer. He may be responsible for these deaths as well as countless others that aren't even reported or even documented within his own private basement. The only thing really set in stone is all the bodies we find within his own basement, all the bodies we find littered across the states, and he himself is shot and killed within the sheriff's office after John, or Arthur, brings him in to finally answer to justice.
Well, it ain't nothing nice. A lot of folk disappeared over the past few years. This sick son of a bitch, well, he ain't right in the head.
That's so.
Head over to the cellar of that broke-down shack on the road to the falls. See for yourself.
Okay, come on.
My name is Edmund Lowry Jr. And you'll remember that, my friend.
I'm sure I shall. You are a frightening fella.
Oh, I'll behave, sir. I'll behave as expected.
Well, you better. And I'll get you a lawyer, don't you worry about that. And you get in that cell, calm as you be. Get him off me!
That's gonna do it for Edmund Lowry Jr., the Butcher of New Hanover. A little bit of a different video covering an NPC this time around rather than someone from the Vanderlyn gang, but I've always liked this side quest. I've always found an infatuation with it, and a lot of little things about it have always excited me. And I've never seen anyone really touch on those specific details about it, so I wanted to just shed a little bit more light on it. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially sticking all the way to the end of the video. And hey, if you want to see more Red Dead Redemption content, 1 or 2, maybe click on one of the videos that are popping up on your screen now. Or if I haven't covered anything yet, feel free to share some recommendations down in the comments section. I have a long list that I'm slowly getting to, but I'll get there, I promise.